The Temple Mount is the site of the first and second Jewish temples, but for hundreds of years it's been occupied by Muslim shrines. The Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Golden Dome of the Rock now sit on the site. But some Jewish people want to build a third Jewish temple.
Jerusalem, a city of ancient secrets, and a prophecy that could change the world. After thousands of years, the third temple is being rebuilt. But that's not the shocking part, because something unthinkable has just appeared, and experts are calling it terrifying. Here's the twist. Archaeologists say this discovery matches descriptions written over 2,000 years ago, almost as if history itself is coming alive. What is it? Who or what is behind it? And could this signal events no one saw coming? Stay tuned and subscribe, because once you see this, you'll never look at Jerusalem the same way again. Signs of the end are converging. In recent years, many have begun to view the world through a prophetic lens, seeing global events as aligning with ancient texts. Among the most striking developments is the drying up of the Euphrates River. Once a mighty source of life flowing through modern-day Turkey, Syria, and Iraq, parts of the Euphrates have diminished dramatically due to a combination of climate change and regional water management. Some consider this environmental shift a direct sign of end-time prophecies found in the Book of Revelation, where the drying precedes the release of powerful spiritual forces. Alongside this, the restoration of the Siloam Pool in Jerusalem, a site deeply connected to biblical healing miracles, is viewed as another signal interpreted by many as the earth preparing itself for monumental spiritual change. Another sign catching worldwide attention is the increasing talk of war and conflict. From regional skirmishes to global tensions, talk of wars and rumors of wars seems to echo Jesus' own warnings in the Gospel accounts. While war has sadly never been absent from the human timeline, the current intensity and frequency of conflicts, especially in and around the Middle East, are seen by some religious groups as more than a coincidence. These developments are not just geopolitical. Many believe they are spiritual markers ticking off boxes on a prophetic timeline. It is not uncommon for religious scholars and leaders to reference these events during sermons or online broadcasts, interpreting them as convergence points of multiple biblical prophecies. In the heart of this narrative, evolution, is the anticipated construction of the third temple in Jerusalem. For Jews, the rebuilding of the temple is the awaited return into the Messianic age, a time of world peace and divine rule. The first and second temples served as the central places of worship and were destroyed in 586 BC and 70 CE, respectively. As far as Jewish tradition goes, the third temple will be built at the time of the Messiah and will have significant roles for both spiritual purification and the fulfillment of divine covenants. To many Christians, however, the construction of the temple serves a rather different symbolic purpose. It holds a place of honor among those Christians who see it as a necessary step before the arrival of the Antichrist, who will desecrate the holy site, and the return of Jesus Christ thereafter. The whole issue is beginning to impose a sort of heavy weight on certain sections of the Jewish community. Gershon Salomon, founder of the Temple Mount Faithful, and Rabbi Nachman Kahana have both voiced the opinion that the time for the third temple to be constructed is very near. Salomon has stated that the Temple Mount should be the focal point of Jewish life in the State of Israel. Rabbi Kahana, for his part, expects the temple to be built before he dies. These voices are not alone. They mirror the rising momentum among different groups now preparing tools, clothing, and ceremonies for temple ministry. There are indications that nearly all these elements are already complete and simply waiting for a political or divine signal. Any action taken on the ground would invite strong provocation from internal factions, as the Temple Mount remains an extremely sensitive focal point. At the center of that site stands the Dome of the Rock, a sacred monument in Islamic devotion. The belief that the third temple must be constructed on that precise spot creates an overlap of spiritual and political strain. Whispers within faith and government circles imply that something may first need to be removed or destroyed before new building can proceed. As a result, many question whether such an action would ignite a large-scale religious confrontation. This concept alone has triggered demonstrations, debates, and heightened military readiness. With these indicators and widespread speculation aligning, an increasing number of believers worldwide, both Jews and Christians, are starting to observe the times with anticipation. Signals have been circulating online, from faith-based discussions to major news outlets, pointing to a growing prophetic convergence between ancient scripture and present-day events. Some dismiss these developments as exaggerated or merely coincidental, while others see them as far more meaningful. Numerous interpretations surround these events, whether viewed as literal completions or symbolic messages. The movement is unmistakable. Something is unfolding. Many are now fixing their attention on Jerusalem with expectancy. Yet for the temple to rise, something must first fall. And that is where conflict intensifies. The red heifer sacrifice is prepared. One of the most widely discussed developments in recent years within both Jewish and Christian prophetic communities is the readiness of the red heifer sacrifice. According to ancient Jewish tradition, the ashes of a perfect red heifer, a remarkably rare animal without defects, injuries, or even two hairs of another color, are necessary to cleanse those who have encountered death. Without this ceremonial purification, temple worship cannot commence. For many years, locating such a heifer has been nearly impossible, since even one white hair disqualifies it. Yet recent efforts have renewed optimism. After years of waiting and multiple disqualifications, one red heifer has now been approved for sacrifice, generating intense excitement among temple-centered groups. The current heifer being considered belongs to a broader initiative directed by the Temple Institute, which in 2018 brought 5 red calves from Texas to Israel. Over time, 3 were disqualified after developing flaws or color changes. By 2024, 2 remained under careful monitoring, and recently one was chosen as the most suitable candidate. This is the ritual law that God has commanded and instructed the children of Israel to bring you a red cow without blemish. Jewish priests, known as Kohanim, are now reportedly preparing to carry out the red heifer ceremony for the first time in more than 2,000 years. Reports suggest that everything from the altar to the ceremonial garments and instruments is prepared, waiting only for government authorization and the exact timing deemed ritually proper. Beyond symbolism, this ceremony holds profound spiritual importance. For those observing prophetic timelines, the red heifer sacrifice represents a monumental milestone. Some rabbis believe this act will genuinely signal the start of the Third Temple era. According to their understanding, no priest may enter the Holy Temple area without purification. Therefore, the red heifer is not just an animal, it is the key that unlocks prophetic completion. The red heifer also attracts strong interest from Christians, particularly in evangelical communities, who link it to end times prophecy and the temple's reconstruction as a precursor to events like the Antichrist's emergence and the Second Coming. Rabbi Azariah Ariel, a leading figure in the Red Heifer Initiative, recently addressed confusion stirred by the media. Reports had claimed that all the heifers were disqualified, a statement Rabbi Ariel refuted. He clarified that a red heifer's status can change. A single white hair may appear, rendering it invalid, yet it might fall out naturally, restoring its ritual eligibility. Because of such factors, the selection process remains extremely cautious and spiritually significant. Given this, the stakes are extremely high, and the Temple Institute has meticulously ensured that every halakhic requirement is satisfied before moving forward. The ceremony would draw a large gathering, including pilgrims, attendees, and global media, creating a vivid depiction of the ritual. The grandeur and solemnity surrounding the event make it historic, regarded by many as a once-in-a-generation moment. Preparations are already in motion to broadcast the ritual worldwide. Rumors also suggest this could be the moment when the long-anticipated first cornerstone of the Third Temple is set as an official spiritual signal. Within temple circles, confidence is growing that once the purification is complete, no theological or ritual obstacles will remain to begin construction. With this event tied to broader prophetic movements, many reference rabbinical commentary describing the sacrifice as a spiritual activation, often called the ignition of the prophetic engine. Critics dismiss it as mere religious theatrics, whereas believers view it as divine timing in motion. They point to the alignment of prophetic indicators, the red heifer, the preparation of temple vessels, and even the restoration of sites like the Pool of Siloam as proof that prophesied history is unfolding. For observers, the red heifer sacrifice represents not only purification, but also prophecy coming to life. And speaking of cornerstones, the next development is equally striking. A former politician has just carved one by hand. The cornerstone has been hewn. A powerful and symbolic moment recently captured the attention of religious watchers and prophecy followers worldwide. The carving of a cornerstone intended for the Third Temple. In a quiet yet dramatic act recorded on video, former Israeli Knesset member Moshe Feiglin was seen near Eli, holding a chisel and hammer as he prayed over a stone. With careful precision, he etched into the rock, offering a heartfelt plea that the people of Israel be shaped like a stone fit to build God's house. While he described the act as symbolic, many interpret it as far more than a gesture. To them, it represents the shift from vision to tangible preparation. Feiglin, known for his vocal support of Jewish sovereignty over the Temple Mount, has long advocated for religious revival in Israel. In multiple public statements, he has declared that if he became prime minister, he would immediately move to rebuild the Third Temple. For some, his deeds and statements express national pride and spiritual destiny. For others, they are seen as dangerously provocative. Still, the video of him carving the cornerstone was widely circulated, generating excitement among those who believe the prophetic wheels are now turning. Rumors indicate that the cornerstone Feiglin worked on is intended for use in the foundational ceremony once the temple's construction receives approval. Beyond Feiglin's actions, several organizations have continued making steady progress toward the temple's reconstruction. The Temple Mount Faithful and the Temple Institute were once considered fringe groups, yet their influence is steadily expanding in religious and political spheres. Over the years, they have produced replicas of temple vessels, trained priests to serve, and prepared architectural plans for the Third Temple. The Temple Institute has even created virtual tours of a fully rebuilt temple, offering a detailed preview of what they believe is imminent. Supporters regard these efforts as acts of faith and proof that the people of Israel are ready to restore what was lost. These grassroots movements are deeply spiritual but have never been without political undertones. Religious leaders, local politicians, and international figures back their cause. Rumors suggest that some donors from evangelical Christian communities in the United States have quietly contributed to the creation of temple vessels and priestly garments. The growing alliance between Jewish and Christian prophecy-focused groups has begun forming a global movement that is increasingly taking physical shape. From menorahs to altars, the instruments of ancient worship are being recreated not as museum exhibits, but as functional implements. This emerging partnership between prophecy-oriented Jewish groups and their Christian allies has fueled a worldwide drive that is slowly becoming tangible. These ancient vessels are being rebuilt for real use, not display. Yet the momentum behind this stone continues to build. Still, it remains unturned, immovable, both physically and politically. The obstacle is the Dome of the Rock. The Golden Dome, radiating Islamic pride, occupies the exact site where the first and second temples once stood, and is today one of Islam's holiest places. Its presence makes building a third temple an international issue. Placing a cornerstone on the Temple Mount without Muslim cooperation would inevitably provoke reactions from Palestinian authorities and the wider Muslim world. Everything about Feigelin's act makes it bold, unofficial, and loaded with both theological and political risk. But what truly stands in the way is more than politics. It is one of Islam's most sacred shrines, the Dome of the Rock standoff. At the very center of one of the world's most contested religious and political conflicts lies the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, a site sacred to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Yet this modest plateau has become a focal point of prophetic expectation and geopolitical strain. For many Jews, the Temple Mount is the holiest place on earth, the site of the first and second temples. Tradition holds that to rebuild the third temple, it must be constructed on this exact spot. However, a major obstacle remains. The Dome of the Rock, a deeply revered Islamic shrine, currently occupies this sacred ground. This has created a tense spiritual standoff, with some viewing it as the ultimate clash between prophetic destiny and religious sovereignty. The Dome of the Rock, with its famous Golden Dome, is far more than a historical landmark. For Muslims, it is believed to mark the location from which the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven during the night journey. Nearby stands the Al-Aqsa Mosque, considered Islam's third holiest site after Mecca and Medina. The entire compound is known as Haram al-Sharif in Arabic, and any attempt to modify, relocate, or remove its structures is regarded as an existential threat by the Muslim world. As a result, discussions about rebuilding the Jewish temple are met with intense resistance and deep suspicion across Islamic communities. October 2023 is viewed by some as a critical moment, with rumors circulating that Israeli officials, alongside temple activists, understand that constructing the third temple would necessitate the removal of the Dome of the Rock. Religious commentators, as well as informal groups like the Temple Mount Faithful, argue that this is unavoidable. They claim prophecy demands that the original sacred site be cleared. Such assertions heighten tensions, particularly during Jewish and Islamic holy days, when the Temple Mount often becomes a hotspot for demonstrations and police crackdowns. Many question whether peaceful coexistence is even possible. Could the Dome of the Rock and a rebuilt Jewish temple share the same space? The idea of an interfaith or academic compromise has been proposed and debated conceptually, but it remains largely imaginary. In reality, no political or spiritual framework exists to support such a solution. The Israeli government has repeatedly stated publicly that the current status quo of the Temple Mount must remain. Yet rumors persist that some policymakers privately believe the third temple cannot exist without removing the Dome of the Rock. Though officially unendorsed, this belief inspires both hope and anxiety among religious communities. This is not theoretical. The Temple Mount is an actual battleground. On multiple occasions, Israeli police and Palestinian protesters have clashed over fears that Jewish groups intend to alter the site's status. Archaeological digs and visits by Jewish activists have drawn international condemnation and sparked widespread protests across the Arab world. It is clearly a global flashpoint. With 3 major religions claiming the land, any structural change could trigger riots, or even the potential for a world war. The discussion inevitably turns to scriptural prophecy. For many who follow biblical and Quranic end-time narratives, the standoff at the Temple Mount is not just about buildings, it is about destiny. Some believe the Third Temple cannot arise until the dome falls first, leading to chilling speculation. Would such an act spark a world war? Could removing the Dome of the Rock ignite a religious powder keg, fulfilling dire predictions from prophetic texts? These questions weigh heavily on observers, creating a climate of fervor and dread in an already volatile region. The fate of this single sacred site could very well influence the fate of the world itself.